The exam starts now.
Than most of the characters that I play, who tend to be very selfish or self-centered or self-obsessed in some way, particularly Mr. Bean.
He was the boy no one could understand until the world couldn't stop watching. Before the laughter, before Mr. Bean became a global phenomenon, there was a child trapped inside his own voice. Every word felt like a battle, every sentence a risk. Classmates didn't wait to understand him. They labeled him strange, awkward, different, like he didn't belong in their world at all. But then, something almost impossible happened. The moment he stepped onto a stage, silence. Not around him, inside him. The stutter that once held him hostage disappeared completely. No struggle, no fear, just control. It was like flipping a switch. The boy who couldn't speak suddenly didn't need to. And in that silence, Rowan Atkinson discovered something extraordinary. His greatest power. And the beginning of his greatest cost. Because every time he became Mr. Bean, he gave more than just a performance. He gave pieces of himself away. The rubber face, the precise timing, the wordless chaos, it looked effortless. But behind it was a man pushing himself to the edge. Every episode drained him, not physically, but emotionally, mentally, deeply. He later admitted the role was exhausting, that he often couldn't wait for filming to end. Think about that. The man who made millions cry with laughter would step off set feeling empty, even fraudulent, like the world was applauding someone who wasn't fully him. And now, at 70, he's no longer hiding behind the silence. He's finally telling the truth. Because the struggle didn't begin with fame. It began long before the cameras ever rolled. Rowan Sebastian Atkinson was born on January 6, 1955, in Concert, a quiet industrial town where life moved simply, but not always gently. He was the youngest of 4 boys, though even before he could form memories, loss had already shaped the family. His eldest brother, Paul, died as a baby, a quiet absence that lingered in the background of everything. The family carried on, but something was always missing. Among the brothers who remained was Rodney Atkinson, a man who would grow into politics, nearly leading the UK Independence Party decades later. He found confidence in his voice, in arguments, in public life. But Rowan's journey was the opposite. While one brother spoke to nations, Rowan struggled to speak at all. And when he finally found his voice, it didn't come through words. It came through silence. A silence that would make him famous. A silence that would hide a much deeper story than anyone ever imagined. On a quiet farm, long before the laughter, Rowan Atkinson lived a life built on discipline, silence, and struggle. At just 5 years old, his words began to betray him. A severe stutter wrapped around every sentence, turning even the simplest conversation into a battle. School wasn't just difficult, it was merciless. At Durham Chorister School, the teasing wasn't subtle, it was cruel. A teacher, Canon John Grove, would later remember a painfully shy boy with a rubbery face and a speech problem that made him stand out in the worst way. Classmates didn't hold back. They mocked his voice, his expressions, even calling him an alien. While others laughed together, Rowan learned to exist alone. Among those students was a younger Tony Blair, who would later recall just how harsh those days were. The bullying left marks deep enough that even years later it was still being written about. For most kids, that kind of childhood breaks something inside you. But for Rowan, it built something. Because the moment he stepped onto a stage, something unbelievable happened. The stutter vanished completely. No hesitation, no struggle, just control, expression, freedom. It was as if the very thing that isolated him became the doorway to who he was meant to be. And here's the twist. Despite everything, Rowan wasn't seen as a future performer. He was brilliant, focused. He excelled in science, earning top grades and securing a place at Newcastle University in 1973 to study electrical and electronic engineering. At 18, his path looked set, a quiet, intelligent young man headed toward a career in science, not comedy, not fame, not becoming one of the most iconic faces in the world. But sometimes the thing that makes you different is the very thing that makes you unforgettable. He was supposed to become an engineer, but something inside him refused to stay quiet. In 1975, at just 20 years old, Rowan Atkinson walked away with a degree that should have defined his future. The next step was obvious: follow his father's path. So he stepped into the Queen's College, Oxford, diving deep into a master's program built on intimidating brilliance, self-tuning control systems, complex, precise, predictable. He even began a PhD, but something wasn't right. Because while equations made sense on paper, they couldn't explain what happened when he stepped on stage. His tutor, Chris Robson, remembered him as unremarkable in class, quiet, almost invisible, the kind of student you wouldn't expect to change anything. Until he performed. That's when everything shifted. Suddenly, the shy, stuttering student disappeared, replaced by someone electric, fearless, someone you couldn't ignore. By 1975, inside Oxford's drama circles, Rowan found his real calling. He joined the Experimental Theatre Club, and it was there, among scripts, sketches, and late-night rehearsals, that destiny walked in. A young writer named Richard Curtis. At first, nothing seemed special. Curtis saw a quiet, odd-looking guy lingering in the corner during rehearsals in early 1976. Then, Rowan performed, and everything changed. A simple driving sketch, a bizarre mime layered with speech. It shouldn't have worked, but it did, brilliantly. Curtis was stunned. He called it pure genius. By August 1976, Rowan took that same strange, undeniable energy to the world stage at the Edinburgh Festival Fringe. It was his first real audience, his first real test. And he didn't just pass, he exploded. The show was a success. The laughter was real, the reaction undeniable. In that moment, the path he thought he was meant to follow quietly disappeared. He wasn't just an engineer anymore. He was becoming something far more powerful. A performer the world would never forget. In a quiet Oxford lab filled with wires, formulas, and the hum of machines, a future comedy legend was building something no one could see coming. In 1975, Rowan Atkinson wasn't chasing laughter. He was buried deep in electrical engineering, working toward a master's degree that demanded precision, discipline, and brilliance. By 1978, his thesis was complete. On paper, his future looked locked in. But behind the equations, something louder was calling. While circuits demanded logic, the stage demanded chaos, and Rowan was slowly choosing chaos. The contrast was almost absurd. By day, a serious engineer. By night, a man experimenting with voices, characters, and timing. Yet that technical mind never left him. Years later, long after the world knew his face, he would quietly become one of the earliest celebrity adopters of electric cars, buying a hybrid nearly 2 decades before 2023 and a fully electric vehicle years before most people even considered it. He didn't just follow trends, he questioned them, challenged them, even criticized the technology with the sharp precision of an engineer. But deep down, the truth was undeniable. Comedy had already won. The stage wasn't just an escape anymore. It was home. Then came 1979. The moment almost happened. Rowan created a radio show, The Atkinson People, for BBC Radio 3. It was bold, strange, and wildly intelligent. He transformed into a lineup of eccentric fictional figures, each voice sharper, funnier, and more daring than the last. Behind the scenes, he teamed up with Richard Curtis, a future comedy powerhouse, while Griff Rhys-Jones helped bring it to life. It had all the ingredients of brilliance. And yet, almost no one heard it. The show was buried in a time slot that didn't fit comedy. The audience wasn't there. The laughs were lost in silence. But something important happened in that silence. Critics noticed. They heard the genius others missed, the precision, the risk, the originality. It was even recorded in rich stereo sound, like The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. a level of quality that hinted at something far bigger beneath the surface. It didn't make him famous, but it proved something far more powerful. Rowan Atkinson wasn't just experimenting anymore. He was ready. Between 1978 and 1979, the doors didn't just close on Rowan Atkinson, they slammed in his face. Again and again, the BBC said no. They didn't get him, didn't hear the genius. And with every rejection, the silence grew louder. His stutter came back stronger, tightening its grip during auditions, betraying him at the worst moments. Interviews became battles. Confidence cracked. For the first time, he seriously considered walking away, trading comedy for a quiet life in engineering. Then, everything changed. He discovered something almost supernatural. The moment he became someone else, the stutter disappeared. Not faded, gone. It was power, real power. He didn't need to speak as Rowan anymore. His characters could speak for him, louder, freer, fearless. And once he understood that, there was no going back. He teamed up again with his old Oxford friend Angus Deaton, the perfect straight man to his chaos. On radio, they built a rhythm. Calm meets madness. Structure meets unpredictability. It gave Rowan space to explode creatively without the pressure of the camera. Still, television wasn't ready. So in 1979, at just 24, Rowan returned to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. Not as a rising star, but as a man rebuilding from nothing. He wasn't above the work. He was seen carrying debris, helping build the stage at the Wireworks Theatre like a nobody. But the moment the spotlight hit, everything shifted. His performance was almost completely silent, pure physical comedy, straight out of a Buster Keaton playbook. No safety net, no words to hide behind. Some people didn't understand it. They walked out. But the ones who stayed, they witnessed something rare. A man who could twist his face, bend his body, and tell entire stories without saying a single word. A performer who had turned his greatest weakness into his deadliest weapon. And that stage, that moment, finally put him in front of the right eyes, the ones who did understand. He was failing, again, and this time it was happening in front of cameras. By 1980, Rowan Atkinson was knocking on television's door once more, but it barely opened. His pilot, Canned Laughter, had already aired in 1979. It was bold, strange, and ahead of its time. He played multiple characters, including a silent, awkward figure the world would one day recognize as Mr. Bean. But back then, no one cared. The show wasn't picked up, another rejection. And offstage, the real battle returned. His stutter crept back in during auditions, tight, unforgiving, humiliating. Every word felt like a fight, every silence louder than laughter. But instead of retreating, Rowan did something different. He disappeared into his characters, fully, completely, obsessively. Because he had discovered something powerful. When he wasn't himself, the stutter vanished. So he leaned into it, hard. By the time he appeared on Wogan in 1980 at just 25, something had shifted. The nervous, stuttering young man was gone. In his place stood a performer in total control, precise, calculated, hiding every flaw behind timing, expression, and silence. That was the turning point, the moment the struggle stopped and the transformation began. Then came 1979, the year everything almost fell apart. The BBC took a risk on a new sketch show, not the 9 o'clock news. It was edgy, political, dangerous. Too dangerous, maybe. It was meant to air in April, but a general election spooked the network. They pulled it back, fearing backlash. Months later, on October 16, 1979, it finally aired. And it bombed. Less than 1 million viewers, brutal reviews. Critics tore it apart, called it offensive, unacceptable, a mistake. Even Mel Smith, who would later become Rowan's close ally, reportedly slammed it as the worst half hour of television he had ever seen. It should have ended right there, but one man at the BBC saw something no one else did. Potential. Against all logic, against all criticism, he ordered another series. That single decision didn't just save the show, it changed British comedy forever. Suddenly, the misfits became icons. Rowan stood alongside Pamela Stephenson, Mel Smith, and Griff Rhys-Jones, and together they ignited something revolutionary. The world had ignored him. Now it couldn't look away. But behind the laughter, behind the rising fame, the pressure was building, and the real story was just getting started. In 1980, after just one series, Chris Langham was suddenly fired. No warning, no mercy. And Rowan Atkinson wasn't having it. He fought hard behind the scenes, pushing producers to keep his friend, proving just how fiercely loyal he was. But it didn't matter. Chris was out, replaced by Griff Rhys-Jones, and the fallout turned toxic. So toxic, Chris cut ties completely, refusing to speak to any of them for years. And that was just the beginning. Behind the laughter, the BBC started tightening the noose. Budgets were slashed so brutally the cast turned it into a joke, mocking it in a sketch titled The Outrageously Expensive Not the 9 O'Clock News. Gone were the grand locations, gone were supporting roles. Everything shrank, everything changed. But under that pressure, something unexpected happened. Rowan transformed. The easy, chaotic shock humor began to fade. In its place came something sharper, stranger, more controlled. His perfectionist edge started to take over, quietly reshaping the DNA of the show. Behind closed doors, tensions simmered, creative battles brewed. You could feel it. This wasn't just comedy anymore. It was evolution under fire. Then came the moment that changed everything. A sketch, a suit, a single explosive line. Gerald the Gorilla. In 1980, during the second series of Not the 9 O'Clock News, the audience met a professor, played by Mel Smith, proudly claiming he had trained a gorilla. But the real star, Rowan, inside the suit. At first, Gerald seemed like just another joke, until he wasn't. When the professor casually mentioned capturing him in the wild back in 1968, everything snapped. Gerald erupted. "Wild? I was absolutely livid!" That line didn't just land, it detonated. The audience lost it. The sketch went viral before viral even existed. It became legend. Scientists even started jokingly calling groups of baboons a flange, straight out of the sketch. And suddenly, everything changed. That single performance helped the show win the Silver Rose at the Montreux Festival in 1982. It secured a BAFTA Awards win for Best Light Entertainment Program. But more importantly, it revealed something the world had never fully seen before. Rowan Atkinson wasn't just funny. He was different. A master of physical chaos, a genius of the absurd, a performer who could say everything without saying much at all. And in that gorilla suit, buried under sweat and silence, you could already see the shadows of Blackadder. You could already feel the birth of Mr. Bean. The moment wasn't loud, but it was seismic. In 1981, just when no one thought the madness could get any bigger, they did the unthinkable. They turned chaos into a hit song. Out of nowhere, Not the 9 O'Clock News dropped a comedy track called I Like Trucking, featured on their album Hedgehog Sandwich. It wasn't supposed to be serious, it wasn't supposed to chart, but it did. And the biggest shock? Rowan Atkinson, a man with zero music background, was right in the middle of it, singing alongside the cast. Even crazier, he wasn't faking the sketch. He actually drove the truck himself. No stunt double, no camera tricks. At the time, Rowan held a real Class 1 lorry license. That tiny detail turned the entire sketch from funny to unforgettable. It felt real. It was real. And audiences loved it. The single, released under BBC Records, took off fast, earning a place on BBC compilation albums and proving something nobody saw coming. Rowan Atkinson wasn't just a comedian. He was a multi-talented force, able to sing, perform, and even handle a massive truck, all while making millions laugh. But just as the momentum peaked, everything cracked. By March 1982, the show was gone. Not canceled, not failing, it ended itself. Behind the scenes, the pressure had been building like a ticking bomb. The relentless writing, the rapid-fire production, the constant need to outdo themselves, it drained them completely. The laughter on screen masked exhaustion off it. Rowan, especially, was reaching his limit. Years of anxiety collided with an unforgiving workload. The success that should have felt like victory started to feel like suffocation. So they made a decision almost unheard of in entertainment. They walked away at the top. No dragging it out, no chasing bigger paychecks, just silence. Pamela Stevenson left for Hollywood. Mel Smith and Griff Rhys-Jones launched Alas, Smith & Jones. And Rowan? He disappeared, only to re-emerge in 1983 with something completely different. Blackadder. Killing a hit show at its peak is rare. Doing it willingly? Almost unheard of. But that moment revealed something deeper about Rowan Atkinson, something far more powerful than fame. He would always choose sanity over success and art over applause. June 15, 1983, Rowan Atkinson unleashed Blackadder onto the world. It was audacious, almost reckless. Together with Richard Curtis, his partner from Not the 9 O'Clock News, Rowan imagined a twisted history where Richard III had triumphed at Bosworth Field. Rowan became Prince Edmund, the cunning, backstabbing son of the fictional King Richard IV. They built massive sets at Enelwick Castle, draped actors in extravagant period costumes, and poured heart and money into every scene. The joke in the credits, claiming additional dialogue by William Shakespeare, was cheeky, but the real gamble was financial. Part funded by Australia's Seven network, the first season pushed the BBC's budget to the brink. Chaos followed. Torrential rain delayed shoots, castle walls became traps, costumes and massive casts blew through funds faster than anyone anticipated. And when it aired, critics were lukewarm. Not as funny as his old sketches, they muttered. The show teetered on the edge of cancellation. Then came a miracle, an international Emmy. That golden statue didn't just glimmer, it saved the series. The BBC, now cautiously convinced, greenlit a second season, but under strict new rules. No castles, no giant sets. Smaller, sharper, leaner. It was a pivot that would define Blackadder's legacy. From near disaster to cult classic, the stage was set for something extraordinary. In 1986, the world of Blackadder transformed forever. Season 2 exploded onto screens, sharper, faster, and darker than ever. Ben Elton joined as co-writer, injecting razor-sharp wit and stories that moved like a high-speed chase. Gone were the massive, sprawling film scenes. Instead, the camera zoomed in on the characters. Every glance, every smirk, every perfectly timed pause now carried weight. For the first time, Rowan Atkinson didn't have to share the spotlight with towering personalities like Brian Blessed. He was the center of the storm, commanding the stage with the cunning, sarcastic Prince Edmund. And the cast? They were game changers. Miranda Richardson burst in as Queenie, a hilariously high-pitched monarch who stole every scene. Legendary cameos like Tom Baker as the unforgettable Redbeard Rum added spice that audiences couldn't forget. Baldrick, who once was the surprisingly clever sidekick, was reinvented as the lovable idiot we now can't imagine the show without. At first, some fans bristled. A critic even labeled Rowan Wally of the Week, dismissing the shift. But slowly, the tide turned. People saw it. The jokes were sharper, the characters deeper, and the chemistry explosive. Then came 1989. Blackadder Goes Forth thrust audiences into the hellish trenches of World War I. Rowan's Edmund, now Captain Blackadder, faced war's absurdity with biting sarcasm. Alongside him, Lieutenant George and Tony Robinson as Private Baldrick brought laughter and heartbreak in equal measure. It was daring, making comedy from the carnage of war, but it landed perfectly, brutal and brilliant all at once. The result? A triumph. Critics applauded, audiences loved it, and the show swept the 1990 BAFTAs, winning Best Comedy Series, while Rowan earned Best Light Entertainment Performance. What started as a gamble had become a legend, proving that even in the darkest trenches, laughter could survive and sting. By 2000, the show had cemented its place in history, ranked 16th on the British Film Institute's list of the greatest British shows ever. 4 years later, the nation voted it second in a BBC poll for Britain's best sitcom, a staggering 282,000 people casting their voices. Its final scene still sends shivers through anyone who watches it. Soldiers charging into no man's land in slow motion, a haunting, emotional crescendo that remains one of television's most unforgettable endings. Behind the camera, the cast was a family. Rowan, Hugh Laurie, and Stephen Fry thrived on improvisation, trusting one another completely. Rowan later said it was the least stressful project of his career, not because it was easy, but because the weight wasn't all on his shoulders. Everyone carried it together, and their chemistry forged pure magic. Many of their improvised lines survived into the final episodes, a rare alchemy of timing, trust, and talent. What we had in the 1980s, Rowan reflected, could never be recreated. Then came Mr. Bean. January 1st, 1990, the first episode aired, and 134.5 million viewers tuned in. Rowan had conceived the character years earlier at Oxford, a silent man whose near-mute antics transcended language, culture, and geography. The show sold to 245 countries. One episode, The Trouble with Mr. Bean, drew 18.74 million viewers in the UK alone. Audiences around the globe laughed without needing a single word. But behind the laughter was a hidden strain. Rowan admitted the role drained him. Every twitch, stumble, and grimace had to be perfect. He carried the weight of the comedy entirely on his body. Simple and effortless to viewers, yet every gesture was a meticulous performance, and it took an emotional toll. For the world, Mr. Bean was joy incarnate. For Rowan, it was a beautiful burden he often longed to set down. In 1997, Mr. Bean exploded onto the big screen. Bean wasn't just a hit, it was a global phenomenon, raking in over $251 million. International markets alone contributed more than $25 million. In Australia, it stormed the box office at #1 with $3.1 million. In the UK, it shattered opening records with $2.5 million. And in Germany, audiences poured in, giving the film over 12 million Deutsche Marks in its first weekend. Astonishingly, it became the fastest UK movie ever to hit $100 million, even before it premiered in the United States. Yet behind the worldwide laughter, Rowan Atkinson was burning out. The pressure of embodying Mr. Bean physically, every twitch, tumble, and contorted expression was taking its toll. By 2002, he found a lifeline, the animated Mr. Bean series. Premiering on March 2nd, it ran until November 1st, 2004, delivering 52 episodes of pure mischief-filled comedy. Suddenly, Rowan could step back, no more punishing physical gags. He just lent his voice, breathing new life into the character while protecting his health. Children adored it, CITV embraced it, and the world watched as Mr. Bean endured in animated immortality. Even decades later, the legacy didn't fade. In 2012, during the London Olympics, Rowan returned for a live Mr. Bean performance amid the iconic Chariots of Fire scene. 26.9 million UK viewers were glued to the TV, and nearly 900 million people worldwide caught the spectacle. Social media erupted. It became one of the most tweeted moments of the night. But behind the triumph came a cost. Rowan was physically drained for weeks. Many now regard that Olympic act as his final full-bodied incarnation of Mr. Bean. And yet, even beyond the antics of Mr. Bean and the biting wit of Blackadder, Rowan Atkinson continued to surprise, proving time and again that his genius wasn't limited to one character or one laugh. In 1994, Rowan Atkinson stepped onto the big screen as a jittery, fumbling priest in 4 Weddings and a Funeral. Shot in just 6 weeks on a shoestring $3 million budget, the film went on to rake in a staggering $247.7 million. His awkward wedding scene, mumbling vows, sweating under pressure, became instantly iconic, hinting at the comic genius that was about to explode worldwide. That tiny role would lay the foundation for his next blockbuster alter ego. Fast forward to 2003, and Rowan transformed into the bumbling spy of Johnny English, a parody that turned espionage on its head. With a $40 million budget, it grossed $160 million worldwide. Audiences couldn't get enough of his mix of clumsy action, dance routines, and physical comedy, echoes of his early Barclaycard ads. The film's runaway success sparked a sequel, Johnny English Reborn, in 2011. Though it earned just $8.3 million in the US, international audiences devoured it, proving Rowan's global appeal. By 2018, he returned with Johnny English Strikes Again, tackling cyber attacks and digital espionage. Drawing on his real-life Oxford engineering background, Rowan infused the role with surprising depth. The film married old-school spy antics with modern tech anxieties, hitting a nerve with viewers navigating a world of online threats. In 2005, Rowan tried something different with Keeping Mum, playing a pastor juggling family chaos. Critics and audiences were divided. Some found it too dark, others too odd. The lukewarm reception sent him retreating from cinema for 2 years, focusing instead on live shows and television, before roaring back with Johnny English Reborn. Off-screen, Rowan's life was equally cinematic. In the late 1980s, he met Sunetra Sastry, a makeup artist on Blackadder. So smitten, he switched makeup artists just to strike up a conversation, leaving co-star Stephen Fry quietly disappointed. But Rowan won the race, and the two fell in love, marrying on February 5, 1990, at New York's Russian Tea Room, with Fry proudly serving as best man.
They had 2 children, Lily, born in 1993, and Benjamin, born in 1995. For 24 years, Rowan and Sunetra seemed inseparable, but in 2014, everything shattered. That year, the couple separated, and by November 2015, the divorce was finalized. In court, Sunetra accused Rowan of behaving unreasonably, but the world's eyes were on someone else. Quietly, Rowan had begun a relationship with Louise Ford, a woman decades younger, igniting a media frenzy. Headlines screamed, and Sunetra was left to watch as her life was replaced by a younger rival. Long before that heartbreak, Rowan had faced a different kind of terror. In March 2001, he was flying over Kenya with his family when the private pilot suddenly fainted mid-air. Panic erupted, but Rowan, 46, who had never flown a plane before, took control. Hands gripping the yoke, he steadied the aircraft until the pilot regained consciousness and safely landed in Nairobi. The man the world knew as Mr. Bean, clumsy, silent, ridiculous, had just become a real-life hero. Few knew the quiet weight of that moment or the emotional scars it left. Rowan's courage didn't stop at planes. In October 2012, he stunned Parliament with a 9-minute speech defending freedom of speech. Calm, precise, and unapologetic, he argued that too many things were labeled offensive and that people should be allowed to speak freely, even if some found it insulting. The speech went viral, amassing over 140,000 views in days, but controversy followed. LGBTQ+ groups and progressive activists accused him of defending hate speech. Despite the uproar, change came. The law was amended, and a ban on insulting words was removed. Rowan Atkinson, the man who could make the world laugh as Mr. Bean, yet in real life he faced danger, heartbreak, and the storm of public debate, and survived them all. Rowan Atkinson wasn't just a master of comedy, he was a man who spoke his mind, no matter the storm it stirred. In 2013, while performing in the play Quartermain's Terms, his life took a twist that made headlines worldwide. At 58, Rowan began a secret romance with his 31-year-old co-star Louise Ford. She left her boyfriend, comedian James Acaster, for him. The 27-year age gap ignited scandal, gossip, and harsh judgment from fans and the press alike. The news broke in 2014 just as Rowan separated from Sunetra, ending 24 years of marriage. He said little, famously remarking, "The only thing more important than not talking about your personal life is not talking about why you're not talking about it." In December 2017, the couple welcomed a daughter, Isella, marking Rowan's return to fatherhood at 62. But Rowan wasn't just making headlines for love. He had long been a champion of the environment, driving electric and hybrid cars since the 1980s and speaking out about climate change. That image shattered in June 2023 when he published a bombshell article in The Guardian. "I love electric vehicles, and as an early adopter, I feel increasingly duped."
Rowan claimed electric cars produce 70% more greenhouse gas emissions in manufacturing than conventional vehicles, lambasting battery production. The piece went viral, picked up by conservative outlets like Fox Business, enraging environmental scientists who called it misleading. The controversy deepened when it emerged Rowan owned a collection of supercars, rare McLarens, Aston Martins, and more. Critics accused him of championing fossil fuels while living a high-carbon lifestyle, even blaming him for slowing EV adoption across the UK. Yet, despite controversy, Rowan's career continued to sparkle with iconic moments. In 1994, when Disney offered him the role of Zazu in The Lion King, he initially resisted. Voice work wasn't his thing, but he relented, and his performance became one of the film's most unforgettable characters, proving that even in silence or scandal, Rowan Atkinson commanded attention. Rowan Atkinson's voice soared across the savannah as Zazu in The Lion King, helping the film rake in a staggering $968.5 million worldwide, Disney's highest-grossing hand-drawn masterpiece. He wasn't the singing voice, yet his performance became an instant fan favorite. When the 2019 remake hit theaters, grossing an astonishing $1.6 billion, Rowan stayed away, and fans felt the absence. It was one of those strange ironies. A role he hadn't even sung in turned into one of his biggest career triumphs. In 2018, sitting on The Graham Norton Show, Rowan delivered a confession that stunned audiences. Filming, he said, was grueling, exhausting. Nothing he did ever seemed good enough. Years earlier, in 2012, he'd told The Telegraph that he wanted to retire Mr. Bean, admitting that watching a man in his 50s act like a mischievous child felt a little sad. But by 2016, he softened, vowing he'd never retire the character. 2 years later, he hedged again. Mr. Bean was unlikely to return, yet never say never, he warned. Fans were left puzzled, but it revealed the push and pull of a man torn between love for his creation and the pressures it brought. For Rowan, Mr. Bean was joy and torment in equal measure. In 2022, he returned to his signature physical comedy in Man vs. Bee on Netflix, playing Trevor, a hapless house-sitter battling a single relentless bee. 9 episodes, 10 to 20 minutes each, brought him back to the slapstick style that had made him famous. But the reality hit hard. At 67, even the simplest stunts were punishing. He remembered Mr. Bean's Holiday, where a single bike scene left him completely drained. Athletic? Not even close. Yet there he was, risking his body to resurrect the chaos fans adored. Man vs. Bee was a triumphant reminder of Rowan's genius, and a stark reflection that even legends feel the weight of time. On January 6, 2025, Rowan Atkinson hit 70, and the world took notice. Born in Newcastle upon Tyne, he had been bending the world with laughter for over 45 years. His birthday exploded online. Fans flooded social media with clips of Mr. Bean's most unforgettable moments, sharing laughs that had traveled from Tokyo to Mumbai to Sao Paulo. Whispers of retirement floated through the chatter. Rowan himself had admitted that physical comedy gets harder with age. Was this the right moment to finally bid farewell to Mr. Bean? By September 2025, the answer was clear. Mr. Bean wasn't going anywhere. The official YouTube channel racked up over 12.01 billion views with 35.1 million subscribers, earning between $77,000 and $232,000 every month. Every day, 1.5 to 2.3 million people tuned in, captivated by a character who spoke no words but connected with every heart. Even comedy legends like Sacha Baron Cohen credited Mr. Bean as a blueprint for humor. Schools now teach the Atkinson method, a masterclass in silent, universal comedy. Critics and fans alike began calling Rowan the 21st century Charlie Chaplin. He had transcended borders, languages, and generations. Rowan Atkinson wasn't just a British actor anymore. He was a global icon, a living proof that laughter truly has no boundaries. In September 2024, decades of fan speculation exploded into confirmation. Mr. Bean isn't just a quirky man, he's an alien. For years, fans joked, theorized, and crafted wild scenarios about his otherworldly behavior. Then Double Trouble, an animated episode, landed like a cosmic bomb. Bean meets clones of himself aboard a ship, and suddenly, everything clicked. Screen Rant declared it official. He's not from Earth. Even the original show had been dropping hints all along. Bean literally falls from the sky to the sound of a Latin chant. Behold the man who is a bean. His name? Just Mr. No first name. As if humans were too primitive to explain naming to an extraterrestrial. Rowan Atkinson had teased it back in 1993, but now it was canon. Fans gasped, laughed, and couldn't get enough of the truth. Yet behind the laughs lies a man whose brilliance has earned him legendary acclaim. 12 major awards, 18 nominations, a BAFTA in 1981 for Not the 9 O'Clock News, a Laurence Olivier Award for Rowan Atkinson in Review, and a BAFTA for Blackadder Goes Forth in 1990. Mr. Bean alone racked up 4 more BAFTA nominations in the early 90s, plus an International Emmy. And still, Rowan questions it all. Success to him feels elusive. He doubts, he worries, but the world doesn't. To millions, he's untouchable, an icon, a genius, and now, quite literally, a visitor from another world.